All right, guys, I hope your week is going well so far. And we're checking in here as 522 group leaders and associate leaders. We didn't have a forum last week, and I'll get back to that. Let me say first, though, some really good news is that we had 76 people in group this past Sunday. Of course, it's Easter Sunday. You would kind of expect that number to be pretty strong, but I think there was a lot of inviting happening. I believe so. And then our worship service, we had 167 folks. That is really great. I'm thankful for that. And I'm blessed for the efforts that you guys have made in the process. Now, what happened on Sunday is what we could call a momentum builder, a momentum starter. Now, we expect that at Easter. How can we parlay some of that into some positive things for the kingdom? Well, I think it starts with being people of God. I think it starts with being people of prayer, people who read their word. And so I come back to this. Are you being a person of God? I talked about in worship service a couple of weeks ago about Moses and the legacy that he left. And maybe the most important part of that legacy building for himself was to be a friend of God, to be face to face with God. And so I will say, for you and for me, it's just that important. And of course, this is not limited to being a 522 group leader. This is in being a human being and to being a husband or a wife or a father or a mother, or a work person in your place of work, or a member of your extended family. And of course, it also applies in your church life and in your personal ministry as a human being, walking with Jesus. And so being with him is more important than anything. Now, I want to chide us just a little bit. I want to put a little pressure on you and me. The purpose of this forum is to help us not just to understand what we need to do better, but to execute the things that we need to do. I have tried to make every effort to be a respecter of your busy schedules. Putting this thing on Facebook, you can respond to it in your own time. You don't have to show up to any kind of meeting or anything like that. And our feedback and our interaction on here has been greater in the past, but it's gotten kind of weak, and so I need to push you on that. And so I need you to hear me that we need to advance the ball each week in some way. So I'm trying to give you some very simple action points to do that are not overly time consuming. So I want to give you two things to think about for this week. One thing to actually do, another thing for you to contribute. I want me to follow up with every person who came to our group on Sunday. So in the forum this week, I'd like you to list the names of everybody who was in your group on Sunday. And then let us know how you plan on touching base with them, to say it was really great to see you. Hope to see you again this week. Is there some way I can be praying for you? Now, one of the easiest ways to do that is if you're savvy enough to use text, you can send a text to 10 people at a time. You're better off to type the text message first, then add the names. Otherwise, it'll turn it into a multimedia message on it, and sometimes people don't get those multimedia messages. All right, so enter your text first, then you can add the names, and then you can just put your finger, in most cases, hold it down on top of that text, and it'll give you an option to copy the text. You can turn around and do the same thing for another 10 people or 5 people or however many more people you got. You could use Facebook. You can use old school phone call. You can obviously use face-to-face. Notes are probably not going to work because we need to strike quicker. Postcards, probably not as good a thing for this. So it needs to be phone call, Facebook, maybe email if you think people actually check it. Text tends to be so great, though, because it comes right to their phone right then. They're much more likely to see it. And if you ask them a question, you're much more likely to get a response and know whether or not they're paying any attention to it. So I usually like to say, hey, it was great to see you. Hope to see you back this coming Sunday. Build that habit. And is there any way I can be praying for you? So please list the names of the people in your group and how you intend to touch base with them this week. Hopefully get as many of them back this week as possible. Okay, then secondly is, I talked with you a couple of weeks ago and didn't get a lot of feedback on this, so I'm going to put it in front of you again. The concept of working on things that are important and urgent. I'm attaching it to the forum again this week, so you have a digital version of this. But there are things that are important. There are things that are not important. There are things that are urgent. There are things that are not urgent. We spend an awful lot of our time here in Quadrant 1, and as small group leaders, preparing a study, what you're going to look at in the scripture, discussion questions, what scripture you're looking at, maybe some creative elements. That's an important thing and an urgent thing. You have to do that every week. right? But quadrant two stuff would be to look ahead and plan ahead for several weeks where you want to go with your studying. And what that does is it really cuts down on the urgency, because when it comes to the next week, you already know what you're going to do. You just need to work on it. You don't waste any time trying to figure out what it is you're going to do. And so another way to approach quadrant two might be to add someone to your group structure, a group greeter, a group activities coordinator, an associate leader, so on and so forth. These are great ways to work not just in the ministry but on the ministry. And so it saves you time, it saves you energy, and it makes us more effective. And so I want you to think about and share one thing, just one thing, and it doesn't have to be done this week, but share one thing you can be thinking about that would be a quadrant two activity for your group. What is one thing that really needs to be better in your group? Maybe it's adding a particular position in your group structure. Maybe it is planning some sort of group activity, fellowship, ministry project. Maybe it's doing some more planning for your small group. Maybe it's got something to do with contacting people on a regular basis. Maybe it's got something to do with accountability, whatever. What is one quadrant two activity that's important but not necessarily urgent, something that's easy to let slide but would really make the experience better, and maybe even cut down on some of your quadrant two, or excuse me, your quadrant one activities if you were to take the time to do it. So share those things, the names of your folks, how you plan on touching base with them this week, and then secondly, what's one quadrant two activity that would really help your group that you can be working on.